You're about to listen to a BBC podcast, and maybe it's one I had a hand in. I'm Tammy Walker, and I produce podcasts for the BBC. My role is to give new and diverse creators a voice with the opportunity to build a career. That's the thing I love about podcasts. You start with just a good idea, but then you have the space to see where it goes. And doing that at the BBC means we can really run with the best stories while developing the most unique audio talent. So if you like what you hear, why not check out the huge range of podcasts we've got on BBC Sounds?
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Sheer euphoria.
Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Podcast, your small yet perfectly formed guide through all the big talking points in the game. It's Tuesday the 30th of January. I'm Jane Lewis, and coming up today...
I'm an Aberdeen fan, I'm an Aberdeen boy. I know what it takes to manage here. And I know the expectation.
The pressure is on, but can Aberdeen boss Barry Robson win over frustrated fans? Also,
I'm ready to go again. I'm going to come out swinging. We're going to keep fighting.
Who will come out on top in a huge relegation battle at Livingston? And guess who's Beck?
Great run from Rodden. He's picked out Beck. Who scores? Wonderful finish from Owen Beck.
We'll get the Dundee fans' view on their returning hero.
This is the Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
Well, Joe Lewis, the former Aberdeen goalkeeper and captain, and Euan Rankine, the co-host of Talk Livi podcast, both join us. Are you both well, chaps?
Good, thanks, yeah.
Yeah, all good, other than watching my football team at this moment in time, Jane.
We will get to that, Euan. We will get to that. Plenty to get through with the boys. But first of all, let's whiz through the latest Scottish football headlines. Well, Hearts have agreed a pre-contract deal with Ross County's Jan Danda, but hope to bring the midfielder to Tynecastle in January. Dundee will have Owen Beck back for the second half of the season, with the Liverpool defender expected to complete another loan deal with the Dark Blues. Another promising Liverpool fullback is the Scotland international Calvin Ramsey. He's joined Bolton on loan until the end of this season. Ramsey's old team Aberdeen face a huge game against Dundee at Pittodrie this evening. Ahead of that match, manager Barry Robson says he understands fans' frustrations. And another under-pressure manager, Livingston's David Martindale, has vowed to come out swinging as his side take on Ross County this evening. We'll get to tonight's action in just a moment, but first of all, of course, it's the last few days of the transfer window. Joe, I just wonder what this period is like for players.
It can be unsettling for players if you're in the midst of a bit of sort of a bidding war, or the club sort of trying to get a bit more money for you, and you're a bit unsettled. But January's not a great time to be changing and moving around. I don't think. I think you would leave it to the summer if you possibly can, for the club and player.
You'll know Calvin Ramsey well, of course. He was at Preston, I think it was, on loan at the start of the season. Didn't quite work out for him. A kind of injury hit spell. He's now moving to Bolton, and the idea will be to get regular games. It's a good move for him. Bolton are going well, actually, in League One.
They are, yeah. It is a good move for him. He needs to get games. He went to Preston and got injured pretty much straight away. So that was not ideal for him at all. But he just needs games. Obviously, he was flying up here. He's so good going forward. He's got so many attributes going forward. I always thought defensively he needed games. He needed to be playing regularly, and he needed the work. I'm sure he's been in training at Liverpool when he's had the likes of Salah running at him. I think he's had plenty of work on his defensive capabilities as well. So, yeah, training with the top players is great, but there's nothing like playing matches, especially for young players developing.
And what do you make of another transfer? We know that Jan Danda will definitely go to Hearts in the summer, but they're going to try and get him in January by all accounts. What's the best way ahead for all parties in that move? Should he go now, or does he wait until the summer?
You always want to try and get it done as soon as you can. If the paperwork's done and it's happening, then you want to get it done. He'll be thinking ahead, and the club he's at, is he committed? Is he fully committed to what he's doing there and then? It's always best to get it done there and then, and get it put to bed. It'll be best for both clubs and the player, but obviously the finances have to be right, and all the other bits have to be right. But we had Aberdeen a few years ago with Scott Wright. He sort of, I think, pretty much agreed to go to Rangers in the summer, and then it was just best for both parties. There's no way he could have stayed at Aberdeen with a pre-contract at Rangers and played. So it was best in that scenario for him to go, and I think pretty much always is best to get it done if possible, because hanging around when you know you're going somewhere else isn't great.
Right, time to turn our attention to this evening's games then. Let's start with Aberdeen against Dundee at Pittodrie. First of all, it's a big match, isn't it, Joe? Not just for the players, but for the manager as well.
Huge game, yeah, huge game. Tony Docherty will be looking, I know him and Barry are mates, but I think if Barry loses tonight, it could be, it doesn't look great for him at all. But again, a convincing win. Barry seems to have found himself in this position a couple of times already this season, and he's always dug a result out. Now, he needs a convincing win tonight. I think if he gets a convincing win tonight, I think if they win by 3 goals, they go into 6th. So, I'm sure everyone will take that, but it's not going to be easy. Dundee have lost McCowan. He'll be suspended, so he's a big player for them. And I'm not sure whether Trevor Carson will be back in goal. 2 huge players for them if they're both not playing. So yeah, it's a huge game for Aberdeen, and if it doesn't start well, the crowd will, I'm not saying they'll turn, but it will get edgy, and that'll play into the hands of Dundee. They'll look to come to Aberdeen and just try and unsettle and unnerve the players and frustrate everyone within the stadium and all the Aberdeen supporters, and Aberdeen could really do with an early goal.
You talk about the role that the fans could play in tonight's game. They are frustrated. Barry Robson himself say that he acknowledges that. There are some reports that there could be a protest before tonight's game. That just must create not a very pleasant atmosphere. It can't be very helpful to the players, although you understand it from a fan's point of view, but that can't be conducive to making the players feel comfortable, can it?
No, it's not. It's not ideal, but it's not an ideal scenario, and you can completely understand the supporters' frustrations. There's a lot of excuses. The team have got a lot of excuses if they want to use them. The congestion of games, etc. But ultimately, you get judged on your results. And whilst the first half of the season there were some really positive results, there was a lot of disappointment as well. There were some great European trips. Supporters love the European stuff, but that's gone. That's history now, and you've got to look forward. And they simply need to win tonight. And the supporters will be there. I'm sure there will be a decent amount. I'm sure a decent few protesting before the game. But it'd be interesting to see the numbers. You hear that online, and it'd be interesting to see how many actually turn up. And I don't think Twitter and social media is always a great indication of the general feeling of supporters, but it'll be interesting to see what the atmosphere is like tonight, and a big test for the players. Can they stand up to that and show real character to put in a performance that everyone at Aberdeen needs? Yeah,
when you look at the points they've amassed so far this season, they're on 23 points. It's the lowest return after 20 games since the 2011-2012 season. Just 6 wins in those 20 games. On the other side of the coin, you spoke about Tony Docherty there, and he's a man who's been receiving kind of rave reviews, really. First season as a manager in his own right. How impressed have you been with him, Joe?
So impressed, yeah. I'm really pleased for him that he's done well, because he had been with Derek McInnes for a long time. He would have learnt a lot from Derek, because Derek's a very experienced and good manager. So he would have learnt a lot from Derek. I heard Derek talking a lot about the spirit in the dressing room, and I think he's done he would always create that good spirit within the dressing room. And it's so important to have that to carry you through the season. I'm pleased he's done well. Hopefully tonight he has a little slip up, but he's a fantastic coach from what I've seen, and proven to be a really good manager as well.
Yeah, you can be a fantastic coach, and obviously you know him well from your Aberdeen days, but that doesn't always translate that you're going to be a good manager, especially when it comes to dealing with players. But is that side of things impressed you? He's obviously got it there too.
If he'd been, say, at Aberdeen under Derek, or Kilmarnock under Derek, or wherever, and Derek had left and he'd taken over, it's a bit of a different scenario. When you go to a new club and you are announced as the manager at a new club, I think it gives you a better starting place. Everyone sees you then as the manager straight away, and not as the coach who's been promoted to a manager. So that certainly helps him initially, but everything he's done there has been fantastic so far, and he's got the recruitment right so far, which is so important, I think, as a manager. as a coach, you're responsible for the training. You're responsible for keeping you sometimes a good cop, bad cop with a manager and assistant manager. It's important to try and keep the morale and stuff like that. So that side of it will have really helped him. And now he's gone to the natural management side where he's picking the team. He's responsible for selections. He's responsible for signings. So far, so good for him on that.
Yeah, well, you mentioned signings there, and as I mentioned earlier, Owen Beck will be rejoining Dundee on loan from Liverpool after impressing in the first half of the season. So how do Dark Blue fans feel about that? So we spoke to Paul Gray from the Up With the Bonnets podcast to find out.
Sheer euphoria. Honestly, the mobile phone with the group chats just went absolutely berserk. Everybody was like, is it happening? Is it not happening? But there was word early doors in the morning that it was happening. And I think obviously off the back of him being brought on against Bournemouth, you had a little sneaky feeling it was going to happen. He's such an important player to the team, and I think that was evident, the first half of the season. He was getting better with every game. He was an excellent defender, but as a footballer, he's a fantastic footballer. One of those guys that can soak up the pressure and then get you up the pitch, win a free kick. His set piece delivery is something else. As the season went on, he was just on this momentum. I think he will pick up from where he's left off, but like I says, on that momentum, he was on an upward trajectory. But I think it was evident that he was missing, in the last couple of games that we had, the Kilmarnock game and the Hearts game quite recently. I think if he was there, especially against Hearts, I think we would have seen the game out. But I think with a link-up that could potentially happen with him and the new loan signing Michael Mellon, I think we could be onto something here. We really could. And it feels strange being a Dundee fan and feeling that positive. it really does. But I think things are on. That's not just on the pitch, that's off the pitch. Dundee are on a bit of a good run just now, and everything's looking rosy. So long may it continue. Roll on the second half of the season.
This is the Scottish Football Podcast.
Joe, that is, on the face of it, it would seem a really good signing for Dundee. He was ever so impressive, wasn't he, in the first half of the season?
Yeah, he's a really good player, isn't he? Really good player. I think he'll go on to have a top career, and it's some signing for Dundee. They've got a few really good players in the squad now. They've really built a core of that, and going along with what I mentioned earlier about the spirit they're getting in the dressing room and what Tony Docherty's built there so far, that should give them a big boost. Everyone around the club, and I think you've already seen the supporters' excitement with it. That will carry them, certainly keep that momentum they've had, keep that going.
OK, let's move on to tonight's other big game then. Livingston against Ross County. Livingston currently foot of the table, 6 points behind Ross County, and they've played 2 games more. Euan, this is, well, we talk about must-win territory. This falls right into that category, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I would go as far as saying this is probably our biggest game since being back in the top flight, to be brutally honest with you. And anything less than 3 points, I think, is condemning us to the Championship. We spoke about on our own podcast that we thought these 2 games against Dundee and Ross County were essentially going to make or break our season, and so far it's not looking particularly great after Saturday's result, albeit really bizarrely. I actually thought there was large aspects of the performance that were a lot better than what I've witnessed over the past kind of 3 to 4 months. But yeah, tonight is, as I say, it's kind of falls into that biggest game since we've been back in the top flight, and anything less than 3 points, it's Championship football for me next year.
We've kind of heard 2 different sides from David Martindale over the last couple of days. Straight after the game, he seemed really down. He was very dispirited by that defeat against Dundee. But then at the press conference yesterday, when he was speaking to the media, he says that he's going to come out swinging. I guess that's what you want to hear, rather than the kind of upset and angry Martindale.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't expect anything less from Davey. We've had him on the podcast several times, and he's fully committed to the football club and he wants the best for the football club. But, I think his demeanour's kind of changed ever since the tail end of last season. Everyone's kind of pinpointing just this season, but I think this has been coming from about this time last year. 36 league games played, 5 wins. It's less than 14% of our games won. We've only scored 22 goals in that time. You're not going to win many games of football, and it's it's been relegation form for 12 months, not just since the start of this season. And I think that almost kind of negative aspect where he spoke about the budget and things going on at the football club, I think it kind of just sets the trend across the fan base and maybe some of the players. And I think it's kind of settled in, and there's just this negative kind of attitude in the stands as well at games. And yeah, it's good to see that he's coming out and he's saying he'll come out swinging, but I would expect nothing less from him, to be honest. That's the type of guy that he is, but I do think his demeanour has changed drastically over the last 12 months.
Do you think he is still the man to try and get Livingston out of this trouble?
I've said from the get-go that Davey's got that much credit in the bank. The work he's done at the football club doesn't just stem to when he took the manager's job. He's been at the football club for a decade, behind the scenes in various different roles, and he played such a crucial part in the football club even being back in the top flight in the first place. So for me, even if we got relegated, I still think he gets a season in the Championship if he wants it. However, those stats that I read out, I think any manager in football would be struggling to keep a hold of their job at that point in time, and I think the fans are right to question whether he is the right person for the gig at this moment in time. But look, I'm still fully behind the manager. Whether he can turn it around this season or not, I kind of doubt, given the fact that he's talked about how we've not got the budget to bring in players, we're shopping in Primark, that comment, and then he's came out the other day and talked about he's got money to bring in players but nobody wants to come. It's it just doesn't set a very good positive attitude going into the remainder of the season in the position that we're in. We're 6 points adrift, depending on the result tonight, could be 9. So yeah, I would say he's still in the job regardless of what happens this season, but I can absolutely understand why any fan would be questioning it, because, as I say, winning less than 14% of your games over a 12-month period, I think any fan would be questioning it.
Joe, it's tough times being a Livingston fan. I guess you'll appreciate that. As a player, when you're playing under a manager who is coming out and kind of saying quite a lot of negative, but maybe being realistic as well, how hard is that to hear? Is that something that players just don't want to hear, actually?
There comes a point you don't want to hear it, obviously, but when you're bottom of the league, the manager can't keep defending the players or can't keep coming out and dressing things up. And supporters don't want to hear that either. Sometimes some supporters want to hear the truth. I think he's probably laboured the point a bit much on the budget, and maybe keep going over the same things over and over again and mentioning the same things is probably getting maybe frustrating one or two supporters. But from a player's point of view, you'd like to think that you'd show the same sort of fight that the manager's showing as well and has shown since he's been there. And for me, every time I've played against Livingston under David Martindale's management, it's been a horrible game. It's been, you're playing against players that are good footballers. Like I think don't get the credit necessarily that they deserve at Livingston for a long time. But they need to get back to where they were, and it's very easy to say that and very hard to do. But a win tonight would do the world of good for them, and I think they'd really get their tails up, and that'd really sort of be nice to hear a bit of positive energy coming from Davey, because, like I say, it has all been a bit negative and a bit down, and it's not surprising when you've been on that run of results. But it would be lovely to see a win tonight for them. Although I've got a few mates at Ross County that won't thank me for that. But just from a Livingston point of view, they've always been horrible to play against, and get back to that.
Yeah, it certainly is a big one for Livingston. Time to wrap things up for this edition of the Scottish Football Podcast. My thanks to Joe Lewis and to Euan Rankine and to Paul Gray as well. Thank you for listening too. Remember, Sports Sound will have all the action from tonight's games live on BBC Radio Scotland Extra from 7 o'clock this evening. Alistair Lamont and Tom English will be back on the podcast tomorrow, so any questions or queries for them, then please get them into scottishfootball@bbc.co.uk. And of course, if you haven't already done so, then please subscribe and follow the Scottish Football Podcast so you do not miss an episode. That's it from us. As I say, plenty of football on this evening. BBC Scotland will have all the games covered for you. My thanks to the boys. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
The winter transfer window is braving the British weather and is wide open once again.
More drama, more twists, more turns.
I am Kay Curd, and every weekday throughout January I'll be joined by Luke Edwards and some of the country's best football journalists to dissect the day's transfer rumours.
From BBC Radio 5 Live, the Transfer Gossip Daily Podcast.
Who will your team buy, sell, loan, or even just be heavily linked with, only to lose out to your rivals?
What will happen next?
Keep up to date with all the comings and goings straight from the rumour mill with the Transfer Gossip Daily Podcast. Listen on BBC Sounds.